My name is Aria Walsh, and I'm 23 years old. Last month, I walked into a fancy Italian restaurant in suburban Boston for my dad's birthday dinner, wearing a red dress that clung to the little confidence I had. I had spent weeks saving up for it, just hoping to feel beautiful for once. My sister, the one who always had to be the center of attention, couldn't handle the way the room turned toward me. "Nice dress," she sneered, her voice dripping with venom. Before I could reply, her hand cracked across my face, a hard, stinging slap. My cheek burned and the entire room froze. Forks hovered midair. Every guest stared. My mom, sitting across the table, didn't even flinch. She let out a low, cold laugh and said, "You deserved it." My heart sank. I wanted nothing more than to disappear. That slap wasn't just a strike. It was years of resentment erupting in front of everyone. I stood there, humiliated, my face throbbing, but something shifted inside me. I would not stay silent anymore. That night, I made a decision. If you were me, what would you do after that slap? Comment below, I'd love to hear your thoughts. That night alone in my apartment, I couldn't shake the sting on my cheek or my mother's cold laugh. It wasn't just the slap, it was years of being pushed aside, a pattern carved deep into my childhood in suburban Boston. Growing up, our house was a stage, and Scarlett always played the lead. She was 4 years older, all sharp cheekbones and louder-than-life attitude. Mom called her a natural star, always praising her looks, her charm, her reckless spark. I was the quiet one, the afterthought trailing in her shadow. By 12, I learned to stay out of her way. Scarlett got new dresses, extra allowance, even Mom's car when she turned 16. Me, I got hand-me-downs and a lecture about being practical. Dad wasn't much help. Samuel Walsh, always buried in blueprints for his construction jobs, barely noticed the tension. He'd come home late, toss me a tired smile, and disappear into his study. "Work hard, Aria," he'd say, as if I wasn't already trying. Mom Beatrice ran the house like a director, scripting Scarlett's life while I was left off the cast list. Once, when I was 14, I won a writing contest at school. Mom barely glanced at the certificate before asking Scarlett about her cheerleading tryouts. That stung worse than any slap. By high school, I started carving my own path. I got a job at a local bookstore, stacking shelves to save for college. Every dollar went to tuition or books, never to Scarlett, though Mom didn't see it that way. "Your sister needs help," she'd say, pushing me to cover Scarlett's overdrawn credit cards or late phone bills. Scarlett worked odd jobs, retail waitressing, but somehow never had enough. Once she borrowed $200 from my savings for a new outfit. I never saw it back. When I complained, Mom snapped, "Family helps family." I was 16, scrubbing tables to pay for my future while Scarlett partied. It wasn't just money. Scarlett had a way of turning everything into a competition. If I got a good grade, she'd brag about her social life. If I tried a new hairstyle, she'd mock it until I gave up. Mom always took her side. "Scarlett's just passionate," she'd say, brushing off her tantrums. Dad stayed silent, his default mode. I remember one Christmas I saved up to buy Mom a scarf. She thanked me, then gushed over Scarlett's cheap last-minute earrings like they were diamonds. I stopped trying to impress her after that. The worst was when I started college. I moved out, got a tiny apartment near campus, and thought distance would help. It didn't. Mom still called, demanding I chip in for Scarlett's latest mess, a car repair, a rent shortage, whatever. I'd say no, but she'd guilt me, saying I was selfish, ungrateful. Scarlett never asked directly. She'd just smirk when Mom handed her cash I'd partly funded. It was like I existed to prop her up. My best friend Lily saw it all. She'd listen to me vent, telling me to stand up to them. "They're using you," she'd say. I knew she was right, but cutting ties felt impossible. They were family after all. A week before my dad's birthday party, I was shelving books at the bookstore when my phone buzzed. It was Mom. Her voice was sharp like always. "Aria, we need to talk about your sister." I braced myself. Scarlett had racked up another credit card bill, $3,000 this time, and Mom expected me to help. She's going through a rough patch, Mom said, as if I hadn't heard that excuse 100 times. I gripped the phone, my stomach tightening. I don't have that kind of money, I said, which was true. My bookstore job barely covered rent and tuition. Mom sighed heavy with disappointment. You're so selfish sometimes. I hung up, my hands shaking. I wasn't going to cave again. Not this time. Later that day, I stood in my tiny apartment staring at my closet. Dad's birthday dinner was coming up, and I wanted to feel good for once. My eyes landed on a red dress I'd bought on a whim, a bold fitted number that screamed confidence. I'd never worn anything like it. Scarlett always stole the spotlight with her flashy outfits, but this dress was mine. I tried it on, and for the first time in a long time, I felt powerful. I caught myself smiling in the mirror, imagining walking into that restaurant and turning heads. Maybe I'd outshine her for once. But the thought of Scarlett's reaction made my chest tight. She'd never let me have that moment. I could already hear her snide comments, see her rolling her eyes. I needed backup. I called my best friend Lily, who worked in social media and knew how to handle drama. You're wearing that, she said when I sent her a photo of the dress, her voice teasing but excited. Girl, you're gonna stop traffic. Count me in. I invited a couple of other college friends too, Jen and Matt, just to feel safer. Lily promised to bring her camera, joking about capturing my big moment. I laughed, but deep down I was nervous. The nerves got worse as the week went on. Mom called again, pushing harder about Scarlett's debt. It's just a loan, Aria, she said, her tone clipped. You'll get it back. I didn't believe that for a second. Scarlett never paid anyone back. I refused again, my voice firm. I can't, Mom. She hung up without another word. The silence felt heavier than her lectures. I started second-guessing the dress, wondering if it was too much. Maybe I should just wear something plain, avoid the trouble. But no, I was done shrinking myself to keep the peace. The day before the dinner, I met Lily for coffee. She leaned across the table, her eyes serious. You're not backing down, right? She asked. I shook my head, but my hands fidgeted with my cup. Scarlett's gonna lose it, I admitted. Lily smirked. Let her. You deserve to shine. She was right, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen. I wanted the dinner to go smoothly for Dad's sake. He didn't say much, but I knew he'd want us all there, smiling like a normal family. I hoped Scarlett would behave just this once. The morning of the dinner, I slipped into the red dress again. My reflection looked like someone else, someone fearless. I took a deep breath, trying to channel that energy. Maybe everything would be fine. Maybe Scarlett would let it slide. I stepped into the Italian restaurant, my red dress glowing under the soft chandelier light. The private room buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the warm aroma of garlic bread. Dad's birthday dinner was alive with family, friends, and neighbors, all gathered around long tables draped in white linen. I felt every gaze lock onto me as I walked in, my heart racing but my chin high. For the first time in years, I wasn't fading into the background. Lily, stationed near the bar, flashed me a quick nod, her phone already out, ready to snap photos. Jen and Matt. My college friends grinned from their seats, whispering how bold I looked. Their support eased my nerves, and I dared to hope the night might go smoothly. Then Scarlett's voice sliced through the chatter. Wow, trying to steal the spotlight, huh? She said, loud enough to turn heads. Her smirk was razor sharp, her eyes raking over my dress with disdain. I ignored her, focusing on Dad's quiet smile as he unwrapped a gift, a tie from a cousin. But Scarlett wasn't done. She leaned across the table, her wine glass tilting dangerously. That dress is a bit desperate, don't you think? You're trying too hard. A few guests shifted awkwardly, their forks pausing. I swallowed hard, forcing a calm smile. Thanks for the opinion, I said, keeping my voice even despite the heat rising in my chest. The conversation picked up again, and I thought I'd dodged her venom. Then Mrs. Thompson, an older neighbor with a kind face, leaned over. Aria, you look absolutely stunning in that red, she said, her voice warm. Others joined in: a cousin, an old family friend, their compliments stacking up like bricks. I blushed, murmuring thanks, my confidence flickering to life. Scarlett's face twisted, her jaw tight. She slammed her glass down, the sharp clink silencing the table. "Oh, please," she snapped. "You're all acting like she's some runway star." Before I could blink, her hand whipped up and slapped me hard across the face. My cheek burned like fire, and the room went dead quiet. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My vision blurred, not from the sting but from the weight of every stare piercing me. Mom didn't flinch. Beatrice sat there, her lips curling into a cold, mocking chuckle. "You had it coming," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Those words hit deeper than Scarlett's hand tearing open years of being dismissed. Dad averted his eyes, sipping his drink, his silence louder than any argument. I wanted to scream, to bolt from the room, but my feet stayed glued to the floor, my face throbbing, my pride shattered. Lily's eyes locked on mine, wide with shock. Her phone still raised. Jen and Matt froze their phones out too, capturing the moment. Whispers spread as more guests pulled out their devices, their lenses aimed at me like spotlights. I touched my cheek, the heat pulsing under my skin. Scarlett leaned back, her smirk triumphant, as if she'd reclaimed her throne. But she was wrong. Those phones, those photos, they weren't just evidence of her cruelty. They were proof of everything I'd endured: her jealousy, Mom's favoritism, Dad's indifference. My whole life I'd swallowed their insults, their demands, their control, always hoping for a scrap of fairness. That hope died with her slap. My hands trembled, not from fear but from a fire I hadn't felt before. Those photos weren't just pictures. They were my weapon. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. Back in my apartment, I sat on the couch with Lily, my cheek still stinging from the slap. The photos from the dinner glowed on her phone screen, Scarlett's hand mid-swing, my shocked expression, Mom's smirk in the background. Lily's eyes were fierce. "We're not letting this go," she said, her voice steady. I nodded, my anger outweighing the humiliation. Those images weren't just proof of a slap. They were a window into years of being pushed down. I was done hiding. Lily, with her social media savvy, took charge. "We need a hashtag," she said, typing furiously. "Something sharp, something that sticks." We settled on red alert, bold like my dress and a signal of the truth I was about to unleash. I opened my laptop, my hands trembling as I drafted a post. I uploaded the clearest photo, the one showing Scarlett's sneer and Mom's cold amusement. The caption poured out of me: "This is what happens when you dare to stand out." My sister slapped me at my dad's birthday dinner because I wore a red dress. My mother laughed and said I deserved it. This isn't just one night, it's years of favoritism and control. I detailed the history: Scarlett's endless demands for money, Mom's blind support, Dad's silence. I didn't hold back, naming Scarlett and Beatrice directly, my words raw but honest. Lily hit post on her account and I shared it from mine. Within minutes, notifications flooded in. Friends from college, coworkers from the bookstore, even strangers retweeted and commented. "This is awful," one wrote. "You're so brave," said another. By midnight, Red Alert was trending locally in Boston. My phone buzzed, nonstop messages of support, shock, and outrage. A local blogger picked it up, reposting the photo with a scathing headline: "Family Betrayal at Birthday Bash." By morning, a small news outlet reached out asking for an interview. I stared at my screen, stunned. This was bigger than I'd expected. The comments kept coming, hundreds piling up. People shared their own stories: siblings who bullied them, parents who picked favorites. "I've been there," one woman wrote. "Don't let them silence you." Another said, "Your mom's laugh is chilling." I read every word, my resolve hardening. Lily scrolled through the responses, her eyes wide. "Aria, you've started something," she said, half laughing, half awed. We spent hours crafting a follow-up post this time with more details. Scarlett's history of borrowing money. She never repaid Mom's insistence that I bail her out, the way they'd dismissed my achievements since I was a kid. I wrote about the Christmas when Mom gushed over Scarlett's cheap gift but ignored mine, the times I paid Scarlett's bills just to keep the peace. Each sentence felt like shedding a weight I'd carried for years. The news outlet published a short piece quoting my post and showing the photo. They didn't name Scarlett or Beatrice, but the community knew. Neighbors messaged me, some shocked others, saying they'd always sensed tension at our house. A local women's group reached out offering support and asking if I wanted to speak at their next meeting. I wasn't ready for that, but their words fueled me. This wasn't just my story anymore, it was a call for others to speak up. Lily suggested a third post to keep the momentum. We added another photo, this one showing my red dress in full view, a symbol of the confidence Scarlett tried to crush. This dress didn't deserve a slap, I wrote. Neither did I. The hashtag spread further, popping up in posts from people I'd never met. I felt a strange mix of power and vulnerability, exposed, but unstoppable. Scarlett and Mom had no idea what was coming. They thought they could control me, shame me into silence. They were wrong. A few days later, the doorbell rang sharp and insistent. It was Mom, Dad, Scarlett, and Aunt Josephine standing in my cramped apartment's doorway, their faces a mix of anger and unease. Mom stepped forward first, her voice icy. "Take down that post, Aria," she demanded. "You're humiliating our family." Scarlett stood behind her arms, crossed, her glare venomous. Dad hung back, his expression tired, avoiding my eyes. Josephine, my dad's older sister, lingered near the door, her lips pressed tight. I stood my ground, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. "I'm not taking it down," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "You humiliated yourselves." Scarlett scoffed, stepping closer. "You're such a drama queen," she spat. "Posting those photos to play the victim, pathetic." Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. I'd spent years shrinking under her attacks, but not anymore. Mom pointed a finger at me. "This is childish," she said. "You're tearing us apart over a dress." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "It's not about the dress, Mom. It's about you letting Scarlett treat me like garbage my whole life." Dad finally spoke, his voice low. "Aria, let's just talk this out." I shook my head. "You never talked when I needed you to, Dad." His silence now was no surprise, but it still hurt. Josephine cleared her throat, her eyes darting between us. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Aria's not wrong." Mom spun toward her, shocked. "What are you talking about?" Josephine took a deep breath, her hands clasped tight. "I've kept quiet too long," she said. "Scarlett's been lying for years, and Beatrice, you've covered for her." My jaw dropped. Josephine looked at me, her expression heavy with regret. "When Scarlett was 20, she stole $5,000 from my account. I found out, but Beatrice begged me not to tell anyone. She said Scarlett was struggling and needed help." Scarlett's face paled, her smirk gone. Mom's eyes widened, but she didn't deny it. "That's not your business to share," she snapped at Josephine. I stared at Scarlett, my anger boiling over. "You stole from Aunt Josephine?" I asked, my voice shaking. Scarlett looked away, muttering, "It was a long time ago." Josephine shook her head. "It wasn't just me. She's been draining everyone, family, friends, even you, Aria. And Beatrice always cleaned up her messes." I felt sick, pieces of my childhood clicking into place. All those times Mom pushed me to help Scarlett, all the money I'd lost, it wasn't just carelessness. It was a pattern, and Mom enabled it. I turned to Mom, my voice cold. "You knew, and you still made me pay her debts." Beatrice crossed her arms, defiant. "She's your sister. Family sticks together." I laughed again, the sound hollow. Family doesn't slap family. Family doesn't lie and steal. I looked at Dad, hoping for something, anything but. He just stared at the floor. Josephine stepped closer, her hand on my shoulder. I should have spoken up sooner, she said softly. I'm sorry, Aria. That was it. I was done. I'm cutting you off. I said my words aimed at Scarlett and Mom. No more money, no more contact. I'm done being your doormat. Scarlett rolled her eyes, but her hands trembled. Mom's face hardened. You'll regret this, she warned. I didn't waver. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. The next day, I called a lawyer. The photos, the witnesses, the online support, they were enough. I filed a police report against Scarlett for assault. My hands steady as I signed the papers. It wasn't just about the slap. It was about reclaiming my life. Scarlett's actions had consequences now, and I wasn't backing down. A week later, the lawyer's call came on a gray Boston morning, my coffee cooling on the table. Scarlett's court date had ended and the verdict was in. She was found guilty of assault. My cheek, those photos and the witnesses left no room for doubt. The judge sentenced her to 100 hours of community service and issued a restraining order, barring her from contacting me for 2 years. I exhaled, a weight lifting off my chest. It wasn't just about the punishment, it was about justice, about Scarlett facing consequences for once. My lawyer warned she might appeal, but I didn't care. I'd done what I needed to do. The fallout hit Beatrice hardest. The red alert posts had spread beyond our suburb, painting her as the mother who laughed at her daughter's pain. Neighbors stopped inviting her to book clubs and church events. Mrs. Thompson, once her friend, crossed the street to avoid her. A local paper ran a follow-up story quoting anonymous sources who called Beatrice's favoritism toxic. She tried to save face, posting vague apologies online about family misunderstandings, but the comments tore her apart. You enabled abuse, one read. Shame on you, said another. I didn't feel sorry for her. She'd chosen Scarlett over me my whole life, and now the community saw her for what she was. Dad stayed out of it as always. Samuel called once, leaving a voicemail about wanting to move forward. I didn't call back. His silence during my childhood, his absence when I needed him most, spoke louder than any words. Aunt Josephine reached out, though. She sent a long email apologizing again for staying quiet about Scarlett's theft. I thought I was protecting the family, she wrote. I was wrong. I replied, thanking her for speaking up when it mattered. We weren't close, but her honesty meant something. With Scarlett and Mom out of my life, I felt lighter, like I could finally breathe. I threw myself into my bookstore job, picking up extra shifts to save for a better apartment. Lily was there, every step helping me decorate my current place with thrift store finds and bright curtains. This is your space now, she said, hammering a nail for a photo frame. I smiled, feeling a spark of pride. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I started therapy too, working through years of resentment and guilt. The sessions were hard, but they helped me see I wasn't the problem. One day, I got an email from the women's group that had reached out after the posts. They invited me to a meeting, not to speak, but to listen. I went, nervous but curious. The room was filled with women of all ages sharing stories of family betrayal, abuse, and survival. I stayed quiet, but their words hit home. Afterward, a woman named Sarah approached me. Your story inspired me to leave my toxic family, she said. I was stunned. That night, I joined the group's volunteer program, helping organize support meetings for victims of domestic violence. It wasn't much, just handing out flyers, setting up chairs, but it felt right. I wasn't alone, and neither were they. Looking back, I realized the red dress wasn't just fabric. It was a choice to stand up, to be seen, to refuse to be small. Scarlett's slap, Mom's laugh. Dad's silence, they thought they could break me. They didn't. Exposing their truth cost me my family, but it gave me something better, self-respect. I learned that loyalty to people who hurt you isn't strength. It's a trap. The real strength is walking away, speaking out, and building something new. I still keep that red dress in my closet. It reminds me who I am.